I'm a messianic, so I agree with Michael Rood on most things. This is really a nitpick on details, not an attempt to undermine his own ideology. I'm taking issue with his explanation for the missing generations in Matthew. When somebody says there's so many things between this one and that one, do you count the ones at the ends, one of the ends, or neither end? For the generations between Abraham and David, Michael counted Abraham as 1 and David as 14, so he counted both ends. For the generations from David to the carrying away to Babylon, he counted Solomon as 1 and Jeconiah as 14, so he only counted one end. Again, for the generations after the exile, he counted Salathiel as 1 and Joseph as 12, so he only counted one end. Maybe Matthew is just sloppy about whether to count the first generation or not, but that seems rather too simplistic. Were first century Jews consistent about whether to count the ends of such groups? I don't know. There are other things that suggest a more complicated explanation may be correct. For one thing, he refers to 4 women: Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and the wife of Uriah, which begs the question of why he doesn't name the last one, which is in the Old Testament, Tanukh, Bathsheba. Another thing, the Tanukh lists 3 consecutive generations between David and Jeconiah, which aren't mentioned by Matthew: Ahaziah, Jehoash, and Amaziah. It's normally thought that Ahaziah was the youngest son of King Jehoram, but I suspect that he was a pretender to the throne for various reasons, like the 20-year discrepancy between Kings and Chronicles concerning his age when he became king. Jehoash is normally thought to be Ahaziah's son, but I suspect that he was a sort of reverse pretender, fathered by the high priest Jehoiada and born to Jehoram's daughter Jehosheba. This would make him a descendant of David, but not a male line one, but neither is Yeshua. Jehoiada and Jehosheba is one of 2 cases in the Bible of high priests marrying women from the tribe of Judah. Aaronic priests were supposed to marry virgins of their own people, but the Bible doesn't clarify what their own people means. Obviously it can't mean Levites, as the other high priest who married a Judite was Aaron himself. I think you can be sure of that. I know some priests, including John the Baptist's father, married Levites, but I'm saying that whatever their own people means, it must include at least some Levite women and some Judite women. Aaron's and Jehoiada's wives had oddly similar names, Elisheba and Jehosheba, which both basically mean the same thing: God's oath and Yahweh's or Jehovah's oath. Does this refer to an oath made by God or to God? What's more, Jehoram, Jehosheba's father, was a male line descendant of King David, who was a male line descendant of Amminadab, who was Elisheba's father. David was succeeded by Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba, which can variously be interpreted as meaning 7-year-old daughter, 7th daughter, or daughter of the oath. Does the daughter take the oath, or does somebody else take an oath that relates to her? Solomon was, of course, visited by the Queen of Sheba. There seems to be a pattern here. The other 3 women whom Matthew mentions were all went to extraordinary lengths to bear descendants of Judah, implying that Bathsheba deliberately seduced David. Did she take an oath to bear the next king, which she succeeded in doing? This is starting to sound a lot like the Bene Gesserit from Frank Herbert's Dune books. I suspect this is where he got the idea from. Is it a coincidence that Matthew avoids Bathsheba's name and avoids kings closely related to Jehosheba? Certainly he must have known that there were really 17 generations between David and the exile. I don't believe this was a mistake. It must have been for some reason. The only thing I can think of is that it's a remez, something that doesn't seem right because the words contain a code. It could be an unavoidable consequence of the code, or done deliberately to clue people into the fact that there's a code there. Sheba can also mean 7, and 14 is 7 multiplied by 2, so does he mean there were 2 Bene Gesserit types in each group of generations? He mentions 3 women in the first group and 1 in the second, so this doesn't seem right, but perhaps the women he mentions don't correspond to the Bene Gesserit. Let's compare Matthew's genealogy with the one in Luke. Luke's is done in reverse chronological order. Luke has the generations from gods to Terah, which are missing from Matthew. The generations of Abraham to David are the same, but Luke doesn't mention any women. Matthew continues as expected with a list of the kings of Judah, although he misses 3. Oddly, Luke continues with Solomon's brother Nathan and what is presumably the house of Nathan. The house of Nathan is mentioned a few times in the Tanakh, but it doesn't say much about it. This covers that this can't be explained by one following Joseph, Yeshua's father's ancestry, and the other's Mary's. Both genealogies agree on Salathiel and Zerubbabel. Then they both have different lists of names between Zerubbabel and Joseph. I know they may have been different Josephs. If we look at the number of generations in each section, there seems to be some sort of pattern. There are 2 sections with 14 generations. Michael, starting with Solomon for the second group and Salathiel with the third, is supported here. Another section has 21 generations, another multiple of 7. We have 9 and 18 opposite each other, and a 20 and a 21. The 2 sections of Luke, which are different from Matthew, contain the sequence Joseph something something Levi Mathat, and end with similar names, Heli and Neri. This looks like a code to me. I don't know what it means. It probably requires a better understanding of Hebrew or possibly Greek than I have, and you may need the original Hebrew Luke to decode it, assuming there ever was such a thing. But if Acts was originally written in Hebrew, Luke almost certainly was as well. The combined genealogy suggests some practice of interbreeding 2 bloodlines every so often. If you look at the Bible, it does suggest that prophetic powers are genetic. Many prophets are related to each other. Some are products of incestuous relationships. God has an hereditary chosen people, descending from a prophet, who is married to his half-sister, with an hereditary priesthood descending from a prophet, who was a product of an incestuous relationship, and had 2 siblings of prophetic powers, and so on. Interbreeding tends to cause organisms to have recessive traits, suggesting that prophetic powers are caused by recessive genes. If Ron Wyatt is right about Yeshua only having 1 set of chromosomes, he should have exhibited every recessive trait in that set. It's very easy to selectively breed for recessive traits. You just breed the males with the females, and all the kids will have that trait. The genealogy is suggesting that our Bene Gesserit type group had 2 bloodlines with different recessive genes, and every so often interbred those bloodlines, hoping to produce a super prophet, a meek Anav in Hebrew. I know Anav isn't the modern Hebrew word for meek, but it's the word translated as meek in Numbers 12 and Psalms 37. This would probably be a messy and inefficient process, as assuming the 2 genes are on different loci, you get normal people. If you interbreed them, out of every 16 children, you should get 9 normal people, 3 with 1 recessive trait, 3 with the other, and 1 meek. You could then use those with the recessive traits to breed new prophetic bloodlines. In theory, you could also breed a meek bloodline, but you'd need a number of meek of both sexes. What was that about Moshe having a Cushite wife because he was meek? Of course, Yeshua wasn't a true product of this process because he was born to a virgin. Another thing you may have noticed is that these combined genealogies look suspiciously like the Kabbalistic tree of life. This normally has 10 sections, or sephirot, but some have an 11th in the Joseph position, and there's even a Christian cross where Yeshua should be. I'm not a Kabbalist, I don't know a great deal about it, and I'm rather suspect of it. The oldest Kabbalistic book, the Zohar, was supposedly written in the 2nd century AD, buried and found in the 13th century. Scholars seem to think that this was really written in the 13th century, but the discovery story is similar to what happened with the Dead Sea Scrolls, so it's plausible. This may mean that the Zohar was written shortly after the New Testament. Assuming that interbreeding bloodlines theory is right, then the Tree of Life may be saying that they are planning to do it again sometime in the future, presumably produce the real Messiah. I believe that Yeshua is the real Messiah. Is there any evidence that anybody is or has actually tried that since biblical times? The Priory of Zion, the organisation Da Vinci Code, was protecting descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, is supposed to really exist and be a Hermetic order. Hermeticism is basically non-Jewish Kabbalism. I have very serious problems with Freemasonry and associated organisations, including the Priory of Zion and the Mormon Church, and I don't believe that Yeshua was married or fathered children. I'm not even sure the Priory of Zion believes that Yeshua married Mary Magdalene. I suspect this is misinformation. Men were seen removing tassels from the corpse of Berenger Sunnier, the controversial chief priest of Rennes-le-Château, which seems to have mystified the authors of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, the non-fiction book on which the Da Vinci Code is based. But it sounds like the Jewish ritual of moving a dead Jews to Tzitzit. The dossier of secrets, which the Priory of Zion supposedly placed in the French library, apparently contains many references to cultivating grapes, something else that seems to have mystified the authors of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. The Hebrew word anav means grape as well as meek. Yeshua even uses this double meaning with things like, I am the vine and you are the branches, this is my blood poured out for you, and turning water into wine. Anyway, it's possible that the Priory of Zion is the modern incarnation of the Bene Gesserit and of reading genetic prophets. This actually seems to fit the Da Vinci Code evidence better than the sense of the Yeshua theory. As Yeshua's family were involved in selective prophet breeding, the prophetic bloodlines could well include descendants of Yeshua's siblings and possibly Mary Magdalene. I wish I had a nice, neat explanation, but this is the best I can do, and I'm hoping that somebody who has a better knowledge of Hebrew, Greek, Kabbalism and Jewish history than me has a better idea or can cross the T's and dot the I's on this.